California grows 2/3 of the nation's produce. So when you have people without running water in East Porterville, the heart of the drought, it makes you wonder what's happening in the heart of our farmland. I'm 40 miles south in Kern County, where the drought has caused some farmers to use recycled oil water to grow food that we eat every day. Hungry now? Tom France has lived in Kern County his whole life. He's an almond farmer, former math teacher, and a unicorn, because he's the only farmer watchdog getting loud about what happens when farm country meets oil country.
For the first time, they're doing this oil extraction using extreme methods on prime farmland. This little tiny tree should be big and green, should be 8 feet tall already, with branches 4 feet long, and it's stunted because it's growing in oil field waste that is buried here, and whatever else they dumped into that pit, legal or otherwise, should have never happened in the first place.
A site like this is only part of the threat to the farm Tom's ancestors built.
In recent years, we've been looking more closely at the oil field practices in relation to water. They are taking billions of gallons of fresh water and injecting it into the oil field. That water, plus some other water that's there, comes up with the oil, and now it's contaminated water. And then they dispose of it in strange ways.
One of the strange ways oil companies dispose of this water is in these percolation pits. Basically, the oily water soaks into the ground with the assumption that the soil will filter it. Water from these pits has already contaminated the groundwater at this location, which is 30 miles west of Tom's farm.
There are farmers so desperate for water in one particular irrigation district called Cawelo. They're taking some wastewater to irrigate crops from Chevron. It's being used to grow food for people. Citrus crops, grapes, pistachios. You grow an orange, it's 90% water when it gets to the consumer. Where did that water come from? It's the irrigation water. If the irrigation water is toxic, even at very tiny amounts, is there a tiny amount of toxicity now in the fruit? Nobody's tested that yet. They're salting up their soil by using this water, which means ultimately they'll have to stop growing everything.
Seth is a public health expert with PSE Healthy Energy. He's reviewing the use of produced oil water to irrigate crops in Kern County.
In cases of many different types of oil development, there are more than 450 compounds that have been used as additives to get oil out of the ground. Some of them are acutely toxic. Some have been found to be chronically toxic.
What about testing by oil companies?
There's been some monitoring of this produced water that's going to irrigation for things that are naturally occurring. Boron, arsenic, heavy metals, things like that.
The hits.
They are not testing for the chemicals that are put into wells.
We know Chevron's testing the salt levels because if the water's too salty, it'll kill crops and farmers won't buy it. But how closely are they considering the impact on human health? An oil company that puts profits ahead of people? No way. This is Scott Smith, a water scientist with a thirst for danger. Instead of testing for salt, Scott's testing this water for toxic chemicals that threaten our health.
We are headed to ground zero in the Cawelo Water District, where all this oil wastewater is discharged by Chevron.
Is there any surveillance?
We're going to find out today, because today we're going to cross the fence.
Awesome. I asked Scott what he's found in the irrigation water.
We found oil and these nasty solvents.
And what are some of the effects of these chemicals on your body?
Kidney damage, liver damage, cancer.
When you get sick,
yes,
you could lose 20, 30
20,
pounds.
30 pounds. It compromises your immune system.
You could go from a size 12 to a size 8 in like 4 months.
Exactly. Exactly. What you're looking at is the Cawelo Water District, polishing pond and dilution pond, where Chevron oil wastewater is discharged and combined with fresh water.
Makes me a little lightheaded. headed?
This is something new that I've just invented, and that's the concept of a water bug, to be able to take a fishing pole and cast into contaminated water.
You've never gotten a sample of this dilution pond before?
Never had a sample until today of the dilution pond.
Is that huge?
This is huge.
The more time I spend with Scott on his covert operations, the more I want to look covert. And so what is this water that I'm looking at right now?
This is water that is used to irrigate crops. The oil industry, and in particular Chevron in the case of Kern County, took split-second samples from the surface. So the notion you can declare water safe because water is in equilibrium or steady state, it never is.
So in order to test properly, you can't just skim off of the surface. You actually have to go a little deeper.
Correct.
And test the entire water column.
And you've got to expose it over time. The technology's out there to clean the water properly.
Chevron didn't respond to our request for an interview, but hopefully everyone will respond to a request from Seth for transparency.
Both Scott and Chevron or whoever else could benefit from being really rigorous and transparent about their sampling protocols. Until we have a list of the chemicals that are going into oil and gas wells and in what volumes and what are their toxicities, we're flying blind.
Despite concerns, Chevron seems proud to sell their recycled oil water. If only the brands using it were as proud, we would see it marketed on products we buy. How would you feel if you knew that this water was in your favorite food? We are going to put on a wine tasting with the terminology that they use for wastewater in Kern County. We're offering a free bottle tonight, if you're interested.
Contamination.
It's French. Contamination.
Oh, sorry.
This product is from the Central Valley, and what's excellent is that there's a revolutionary new way that they're refining the water from grapes. Just
really
some
nice.
notes of acetone that you might be able to
pick
taste.
that up.
Just focus on the mouthfeel when you...
Mouthfeel.
Yeah. It feels kind of tingly.
It's lush.
Lush tingles.
I like the mouth. It really sits on my tongue.
Like almost like an oily texture to it sometimes. And so the benzene in the water is really helping to soften those tannins and to make those grape skins even break down even more.
So you're treating the water with benzene?
The water that's coming and irrigating the vineyards has some benzene in it.
Are you legally allowed to irrigate with water that has benzene in it? Great.
Personally, I'm a huge fan of the notes of carcinogens. I think it's really an exciting time.
Cheers.
You didn't drink your wine. Do you want to have more?
Nope, I'm all right. Thank you, though.
This episode raised some serious questions. Please click below to see what we can do together to take action.
Next time on Spotlight.
It's not right for 3.3 million Californians to have asthma, especially poor kids, because people are polluting in their neighborhood.
What do we want?
Clean air.
And when do